Oops. Welcome to the broadcast, everyone. We're going to be continuing our game dev project today. Hopefully we're going to get into projectile splitting. See how that carries us, though. Hello, Skylar. Welcome. And yes, we have all 5 kitties visible right now. Sky is an Ember spot, and so Ember is, to some extent, sulking over on the shelf. When she's not in her personal spot, she tends to be kind of loafed up like that. We have Sherbet and Sammy over on the bed. And then Mason is in the box. Just adjusting that area seems to have made it a little bit more favorable for kitty traffic. And hey there, Dwarf. Welcome everyone. So last time, we got some of our movement logic really rolling. Let's see which cat cam we're set to. So we've got, let's see, we had rotational movement, we had basic wave motion, we have like accelerating motion. All kinds of stuff can be done now. But one of the next things that we need to come up with is how to make the projectiles do things like split into 3. That's going to be where I think some of the really interesting behaviors are going to come from is, after so long or on impact, splinter into 3 or produce another one kind of thing. And the trick is going to be doing that. Well, not actually creating them. Creating them is the easy part. We already have logic that does that. If we look at our catalog, we should have a copy. And all that's going to do is it's going to go in and say, okay, I have this one, make another one. So we'll have that starting point, but we don't actually just want an exact copy. We want one that is positioned in such a way that it will be ready for the difference in movement. So, the classic one, the one that we're probably going to start with, is kind of a 3 spread. So 1 projectile turns into 3, with the first one going in the same direction, and the subsequent ones, though, going at usually like 45 degrees left and right kind of thing. I have some thoughts on how we might accomplish this. But not 100% certain. So let's look at where I'm starting from here. Move. Here's wave pattern. This is kind of what we're thinking of. This is kind of where I'm thinking. So this is like a kind of an S-curve wave kind of thing with a left-right sort of metronome tick between positive and negative 45 degrees. That it is going back and forth. So it will turn a little left, turn a little right, turn a little left, back and forth, back and forth. One possibility is that a pattern behavior is still effectively a movement behavior, but if I want them to appear in different configurations, I rotate them. And in order to accomplish that rotation, the behavior one will go through a series of states. The first is that it's dormant. It hasn't been triggered yet. When you first enter it, and for the initial entity that has entered it, the behavior does nothing. It's whether it has done its duplication or not. But once it's begun its duplication process, all subsequent ones are going to get, when it copies that particular behavior, they're not getting it in its dormant state, in the state that will create duplicates. They're getting it in its active state, which is a state that has, so for the purposes of 3 spread, it will have 2 extra states for the 2 new projectiles that get created. One of them says rotate a little left, and the other one says rotate a little right. And that's all they do. So when we go into act, it says, is this the first time I am actively being triggered? If it's the first time, then I will begin to create them. And part of that creation process is it changes something about itself, spawns a copy of the entity. Changes something about itself, spawns a copy of the entity. Those changes that it makes will be the things that cause subsequent calls to act to behave differently. So let's make... I'm going to call these. They're not movement behaviors. I don't know that I want to call them spawner behaviors, but they're kind of spawners. So we're going to call it a spawner behavior. Because we might be able to leverage this going forward. We'll see. Okay, so we're going to have a spread pattern here. We're going to use the move wave, so we're going to have spawn spread. And again, this is stream of consciousness kind of stuff, so if you don't understand what's going on, I might not either. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. If you just want to chat about something, don't worry about it. I will take time and pause and talk with you just as often as I can. So we don't have a cycles active. Okay, so has it spawned or not? This is the basis for this particular one. We're keeping some of this in here because we are going to do some rotation. But whether it has spawned or not is the first check. Hey there, Parakeet. Welcome. Joining us right at the beginning here. Thinking through how I'm going to do behaviors that spawn other entities. And I think I've got the basics of the idea down. We're going to see how it plays. So our first check is going to be, has the spawn been triggered up? We might make a parent class that contains this kind of stuff. Don't know yet. We might. So we have if not yet, Lunar. Though some sort of viewer participation mode is something that I've always wanted to put in this. Some sort of, stream integration thingy. And since Godot lets us use a modern C# compiler, we would have access to libraries for things like YouTube. Twitch is less hard to interact with if you're just using on-screen text. So if you're doing things like interacting with what people are saying, or like subscription and bit events, it's really easy to integrate with Twitch because it's all an IRC feed. So as far as your program is concerned, it just looks at your channel and says, oh, what's going on? There are more complex integrations you can do with more things like stream keys and the like. But if you're just watching chat, you can get a lot of the stuff covered. YouTube, on the other hand, completely different animal. Completely different animal. Okay, so if we have triggered a spawn, we're going to go into a secondary behavior set here. If it has not yet spawned, this is where we're going to do spawn logic. Yep, a remote website is a fun way to do it. You can do things like, and I really wanted to play one, but it was just viewership mattered on that one as far as like raw numbers, but it was like Stream Battlers or something like that. It was a little auto battler kind of thing where each person could put their troops in, kind of stuff. It was kind of neat. Okay, so we'll get to this state in a moment. But if we trigger act and there's nothing that stops it, in the case of this one, it's going to have two modes. If it gets triggered, it will do its thing, and from then on, it won't trigger the spawn again. So we come into act for the first time. So the gate is opened. We say, has it spawned yet? Defaults to false, so it hasn't. We're going to do a loop of spawning, which is going to be where we'll take an action, we'll create a copy of the entity, and we're going to loop on that. In this case, the first part of the action is we're going to we set that we have spawned. So we're doing this immediately. We don't want to lose track of this. This is critical so that you don't get some sort of crazy exponential loop. What this will also do is that we make sure spawned is equal to copy spawn up public bool spawned. This is a spawn spread. Okay, so we're copying that over. What this means is that once the copy has happened, the spawn logic will never happen again. Then we are going to... We're going to change the state. So we have ultimately 4 states. Well, let's call it 3. There is, I haven't done a spawn yet. If I haven't done a spawn yet, that's our neutral, let's call it our dormant state. We haven't done anything yet. Then, once I pass that, I'm now into one of 2 states. I'm in I was the initial projectile and am unchanged going forward. If that's the case, then nothing happens up in here. If something has changed, though, we'll apply that change. So, for the purposes of this, what the first state is has spawned. The final flags, the remaining flags, is a variable that is a container for the angle that we will rotate the projectile by when we pass through this act subsequently. So for the purposes of a 45-degree spread, the 3-bullet spread, oops, it's not inaccurate. For the purposes of a 3-bullet spread, there's going to be has spawned, true or false. If has spawned is true, the second variable that we're going to be looking at is the degrees to rotate. Really want to do the math over we'll figure out what we're going to explicitly call this is how far to rotate it. There will be other variables that we can set up for this. Because 0 is a special case. 0 is kind of the origin projectile. We could do this differently, but we'll see. That's kind of the goal, Lunar. Eventually, what I might look at is things like my catalog entity. I might go in and see if I can make a parser for it, so it's loading in like an external script or something like that. You know, Lua files and the like. So that there would be a way for us to load extra logic in or new combinations of behaviors for new modifiers, that kind of stuff. Short term, not that yet. But that sort of principle, I think, is good. Okay, so we're going to brute force it for now. We're going to say the first one is F increased radians. So we do this, and then we are going to say well, that'll slow things down, Parakeet. That'll make it difficult. Let me verify that I've got this syntax correctly. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're setting the change here. So we're saying, here, we'll move this guy up a little bit. So I'm making two kind of clones. Okay. So we haven't spawned yet. We go in, this triggers. It then goes in and says, all right, I'm going to set my local radiance to rotate to 45. I will clone the entity, and then we'll instantiate that entity. Then to negative 45 and do the cloning. The reason that we're setting this is as soon as we do this clone, this object will get copied, and part of its copying process is to copy this as soon as I write that in there. That. So it'll know it's already spawned, and it will know the changed value that it's been set to. Now, when we come in here, we get our proposed movement. We already have our radians to rotate, so we don't need that. Instead, we are going to do that. So what this should do is when it comes into existence, when this first triggers, we're going to create two copies that are 45 degrees left and right of the initial one. They move in all other ways the same, except upon encountering the spread, that's what's forcing the fork of them. In theory. The presence of this is leading me further and further to believe that movement needs to be a special type of behavior. They should not care about targeting unless it's relevant to it. And what this means is right now I have these other ones, but we're going to keep it for now. We're not going to try to rip up those floorboards just yet. So we go into our catalog. And we've got load textures. This is also where I think we want to start splitting out what the different behaviors are. So these are all movements. We're going to rename that to load movements. Because these are all our move style behaviors anyway. Static void. Cloud void. Oh, that'll be convenient. Also, welcome, Tass. Early. I'm going to take a quick break. Be right back. Okay. So what we're trying to do here is we're going to have the splitting behavior. So we have an existing spawner. Have behaviors here. Putting our entities. Just going to have two of these available so that we can see more of what they're doing here. So secondary group, this is our primary one. It's going to be moving to the left. Then we're going to have a get behavior, spread like that. And it's going to keep moving in the proposed direction. Let's... Actually, no. After 3 seconds, we will spread. So in theory, this will work. We'll see how that plays out. Looking promising. Now we've got to now we've got to make it a little more complicated. Again, it's still dominated by movement left. Okay. Let's accelerators there. As last time, movement proposed direction just adds another speed increment to whatever it's already doing. Now, this will eventually, if we let this run long enough, it will run into the, it will go over the 15,000 cap. So, I have to be aware of that. But yeah, it's doing what it's supposed to do already. I am pleasantly surprised. Normally, it's broken a few more times before we get here. Okay, so these rotate out and they split. So then, as you have noted, Parakeet, what if we do it again? Technically, we could just daisy chain them within it, but 1, 2, 3, split again. Okay, we're definitely getting a bit of hitch in here. It might just be the way it's looking when it spawns, but that really seems to be slower than it should. Everything else is smooth, though. I think it might just be the animations. Okay, so the second split is not behaving how it should. Let's remove the rotates. Oh, okay. That's part of why. So remember how I said it rotates them. This is this first one. Okay, so we've got our first hitch. All right. We'll be able to see it in a moment. So it's going left. Splits into a fan. Then when it splits again, you see how the fan is not related to the first one. It is independent, in a vacuum here. So we need to make sure that the rotation that it's got is relevant, that it stays kind of how it's calculating. How to put it another way. Because of the way the behaviors happen, once this one is done, once this gate opens, this one ceases to rotate it anymore. So the relative position that this one comes in as soon as this gate opens and this one goes away, this pattern is no longer at a 45-degree spread. It is resuming to just moving left. So the spread is now relevant to left. It is not relative to left. It is not relative to 45 degrees off of left. We need to fix that. But how? Because as soon as it comes in, the proposed movement is different. This might be where targeters come in for the spreads. Because we could manipulate the targeter of this behavior each time. So, I know, right, Parakeet? I do appreciate that YouTube gives me a better impression of, why. Anywho. If we set it to be this is your base direction, what else we might have here? Because we've got the most basic case, split into split into split kind of thing. The basic premise is sound, but we need to make sure that it carries forward each time, that it knows where it's coming from. Because it's not the local targeter that matters. Again, so once this one is done, everything that it's done doesn't matter anymore. Because it's no longer rotating anything. That entity is now going to resume moving left, or whatever way it was moving before. It could have been moving in a random direction that happened to be left. As soon as this gate closes, or as soon as this gate is done, we stop rotating it off in that fan. Then this one goes and says, okay, I will rotate it off that fan, but the proposed direction that is coming in is based off of the current movement, and that will always get reset to this. Now, one possibility would be to have it influence the entity's target behavior and direction when it fires. That doesn't guarantee anything, though. And it doesn't fundamentally change what a given movement or targeter will do. Already a questionable design path that I'm using there. So let's look at a couple of these. One thought I've been having is going back around to targeters. So this idea, this one moves left, this one moves up, down, that kind of thing, those are kind of absolutes. The fact that it's the targeter doing it doesn't really change anything for us. Similar with random direction. The targeter being the source of random direction doesn't really do anything. I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't really matter that move left has a targeter that points left, and the move part is just go in whatever direction the targeter tells me. It happens to be useful as far as like separation of functionality in the current class architecture, but it's not a necessity. It's not a functional necessity for us to do it that way. If instead targeters were specific to the entity, then there might be a little bit more we could do, because then we could manipulate the entity's targeter and tell the targeter, hey, rotate like this. And that could then be maintained. That could carry forward. If it was originally a targeter facing left and it's told, hey, you need to rotate 45 degrees, it's now a targeter facing left, but rotated 45 degrees, kind of thing. Targeters are supposed to supply an entity or a direction to a behavior. So in the case, like, if it's saying left, it will always just say left. If it says target the player, it will, say that's the player. The entity that you want to target is the player, and, this is the direction to the player. Or this was the direction to the player at the first time I was asked, kind of thing. It's to cover that functionality of things like, give me a random direction for this. Correct, Tess. Not all of them really care about it, and that's why I'm starting to think if we pull that out of it and say that the entity has a general target behavior, that we could say let's just go with the most basic example. It goes in a straight line. Oh, so we have the idea of the homing mouse. The homing mouse cares about what the entity is and what the direction to it is. Everything else about it would be just, move towards that target. So the target is relevant to it and the type of movements that we would supply. But if we're just going with, travel in a straight line shot, our other projectile is that we've made is a yarn ball. So maybe the yarn ball goes in a straight line. It's just going in a straight line. The fact that it's going to the right or left isn't really important and isn't really something that we would make a modifier for. It's more that it goes in a straight line. And it wouldn't care if the thing that told it what the straight line was a entity or anything like that. It's just saying, I started going this way, I shall continue going this way. Because if we say that movements don't care about it, that movements don't carry a targeter, then we'd still run into things like we can't have a movement that says, move to the right, and then this one says home on an enemy. Now, a movement is a behavior, so all behaviors have targeters. And within that behavior, it might look at the targeter and say, tell me something. One of my problems is they don't all do that. Some of them don't care. Like right now, the split into 3 doesn't care about the targeter. It could. We could put information about the direction that it should be moving in the targeter, but that doesn't solve the problem that we're facing. But so, here are the movements that we have. Move in proposed direction has a targeter that just says, whatever direction the entity is already moving in, that's the direction that you're going to get. The movement doesn't consult the entity, it consults what the targeter is. They're all just move straight line. Whatever direction the targeter tells me, I go that way. So if I had a targeter that was constantly changing direction, move straight line would constantly change direction. This allows for some interesting functionality and makes it nice and modular. But it means that we don't have... Some of the types of behaviors don't care about it, though. And some of them, even if they do use it, it might be sort of a hack. to make it work. Yeah, Tess. It's whatever we're already doing, do it some more. As if we look, move straight line just says, hey, targeter, update yourself, and whatever the target direction is, add another movement increment to that direction. Whereas like last time with move and with the rotational ones, I've got them updating the target they don't actually need to because they don't do anything with it. Which is also part of my problem is that since they don't all update the targeter, it can lead to some inconsistencies. Could just put this in a super function of behavior and say that all of them update their targeter if it exists. Because then the targeter can in turn update the entity and say the entity's current target direction and target entity is this. Because ultimately what we've got is that the entity has a particular direction that it is generally moving in at any given moment. We could look at it as at the end of every act, there is a moment where the entity's proposed movement is something new. So, after this call, this value has changed. I now have a new direction. And each time the entity is going to have something different when it comes into that. But this is always getting refreshed, so we don't have... Yeah. A relay race kind of thing. And it's... The problem that we're facing is the lost information between these two steps. This one had it rotating to face a different direction. That is ceasing to happen. Because that ceased, we don't get a relative rotation, we get a fresh rotation. So instead of getting it fanning out, we're just getting it straight branching in this case, which is not what we want. Hey there, Erebus. Welcome. So it's this upper and lower branch that are our problems. No worries, Erebus. Priorities. So what could be the changing thing? Well, the middle branch is technically doing it. The middle branch, it's okay that it's doing it, at least as far as visually. Like, the problem that's happening right here is the same problem that's happening everywhere else. But it looks right in its failure. So yeah, they're all broken. It's just the other two look wrong. How to fix. So one possible thing is that we have the concept of a sort of core rotation, where we are applying a modifier. Sorry. So we're going to split into 3, then 3 seconds later we're going to split into 3 again. See how it fans out 45-degree angles. Well, on the edges here, on the upper sides, it's not fanning out at 45-degree angles from its initial direction. Instead, it's reverting to a move left and then fanning out again, because the dominant movement has taken precedence again. This is not the end of the world. Thinking on it, not the end of the world, but I would like a way to preserve the ability to actually do a full fan out, you know? To continue in the direction that it has been going, and not just the direction that it is going. Well, there's currently no actual state passage is the thing. All right, Erebus, thanks for swinging through. Like, the only thing that the subsequent ones know currently is what the entity is currently doing. So when I say it reverts back, it's that this behavior goes away. I have 2 split into 3s. When a split into 3 happens, once it is split, that split just becomes a movement that rotates it. But they're always moving left. I think it might just be a phrasing thing. They're always moving to the left, but the presence of a split that has happened is what is making it so that it rotates that 45 degrees to create that spread. Once this one goes away, that rotation ceases to happen. So the movement of each individual entity loses that rotation, and it snaps back to just moving left because that's the only vector. Or it doesn't snap back, it just doesn't get rotated anymore. Again, it's that baton pass. The first one says move to the left. The subsequent one first says, hey, rotate it. Make more and rotate them. Well, doesn't quite do that, but this one now says rotate it. When this one goes away, it's not rotating it anymore. We encounter this one that says split them and then start rotating them. So there is it's that we don't have we don't have a pattern that is carrying this rotation forward in practice. I don't like the idea of having like a master rotation that changes that kind of transforms space for the entity, you know? if I rotate it 45 degrees for a projectile, I don't necessarily like the idea of rotating space 45 degrees as far as all of its movement. It's a possibility that we could use. So, you know, its left could turn into up for the rest of the world. They can have a target or direction on them. Like each individual behavior can have a direction. An entity can have a target direction. But that target direction is currently expected to be manipulated by any targeter on them. And right now, I'm not really using it. Or I don't know that I really want to use it. Because it does create sort of like a indirect data passage kind of scenario. It muddies the waters. Yeah. So that's a possibility. I was just talking about, Tess, the idea of if we had a base direction, you know, let's say our base direction is essentially neutral. We don't modify it. So whatever vector comes out of it is whatever. So if it's going left, it's going to move -1, 0. You know, it's going to go screen left. But if I then subsequently rotate it 90 degrees to create a new projectile that's going straight up from the current one, a way that we could address that would be to have a master rotation that is 90 degrees. And at the very end of the entire movement chain, I say, this is the master rotation that has been applied to this entity. Take your angle of motion, your vector of motion, and rotate it that much. So currently, James, any spawner has the ability to spawn a projectile with a location and a behavior configuration. Speed is entirely controlled within the behavior configuration. When it's duplicated, that might carry over identical variables that will affect that. Direction is still controlled entirely by the behavior chain and is kind of what we're facing right now. There is no independent physics outside of the behavior chain. No friction, no gravity, no acceleration, nothing. It's only what the behavior chain says. So if there's a behavior element that says, you know, apply a 90-degree vector to it, that's exactly what will happen. But let's open that up. Where is it? So when an entity acts, we go through our behaviors. This is, but at the end we say proposed movement. What we could do is have proposed movement rotated by a master rotation, which would remove the necessity of having to say, like, hey, this one is actually 45 degrees off of this. It's that this projectile's world has been turned slightly as far as what it considers directions to be. That ultimately won't work. thinking on it just a little bit more. That won't work. Because if it's supposed to be flying straight at an enemy, we don't want it to twist that. Because then it could never hit it, you know? Because even if they could start with a speed and direction, the behavior chain would immediately stomp on it. Okay. So this is technically how the sausage is made right here. But do you mean when it's split? Because when it's split, this is what's happening. All right. What is your zoom in hotkey on this one, Windows? You'd think that, Tass. This is control mouse wheel. Control minus equals. Oh, it's the whole thing. Okay. So the thing that's allowing the rotation to currently happen, we edit ourself. This is the behavior that spawns a copy. It changes itself and says this will be the angle of rotation, and it creates a duplicate entity. When that duplicate is created, this behavior is copied, and that change is copied. Since spawned is now true, and this is set, when we subsequently go into the act of this one, this is what rotates it. It will rotate it based on that value that we created in the parent. And we have two different rotations for that. This is what goes away, and this is why it, snaps back. So this works for a single pass. Like in a vacuum, it works for a single pass, but it's not really what we want to do. Now, we could have an entity remember its last movement step. This is not foolproof, but we could ask the entity, what was your last vector, But a constructor on what, Tess, is the thing. Because this is not... What we're doing right here is not duplicating this thing directly. The spreader is not what's being duplicated directly. The whole bullet is being duplicated. We're making a new one that shares all of the current status of it. So, you know, if it's passed through something, if it's lived for 10 seconds, that kind of thing. All of that's being duplicated. That duplication process has no idea that I want to rotate it. If we're going to have a rotation logic, that would then subsequently be on the new bullet. And that pattern is kind of where we lived prior to this this incarnation. We had logic to go in and say it was on the behavior chain level, kind of messy to deal with. But it was something that passed into movements and targeters and said, I would like you all to rotate. And then if they were subject to that, they would do so. So instead of the entity having a master rotation, this rotation element would be kind of percolated down into all of its constituent parts. Why would copying why would a copy always have a radian as its second? You're copying a catalog item. It could be a movement, it could be a behavior, it could be an entity. So if I'm... I get the function of doing this. I'm kind of concerned about signature bloat. But since we know it's an entity... Yeah. But since we know it's an entity, I think rotating the entity is not necessarily out of the question, you know? Something along these lines. Yes, I've created the copy and I say, rotate that copy. So now everything about it is mirrored. Like I've got all the stuff. But now I'm going to send it down through the whole mess and say, everything about you needs to be shifted X degrees. So we would have corresponding rotates on behaviors and targeters. With the entity going through and saying, okay, on my base behavior and my my behavior chain after it, I'm going to call rotate. And then each one of them would subsequently go in and call it on its constituent parts and targeters. And for the most part, yeah, I think we can work with that. We'll need to look at, and it keeps things how we kind of want them. All right. Need to look at this. This still not thrilled with this. The intent of this is to allow targeting information to daisy chain. So if I target a random monster and then a subsequent behavior says target a random monster, that we don't want it to be two random monsters. That will make the weapon hard to use, if at all. So we could make them target the same monster. But the targeters are very divorced from each other. They don't, they're potentially several layers of objects away from each other. Yeah, it's for the most part what this would be is it would be constantly updating, is every targeter would poke this and say, hey, it has this entity, do I care? And then at the end of it, it would say, it has this entity, I have this entity, I'm going to update that entity to something else, kind of stuff. Hello, Scuff. You are named appropriate for this stream, I guess. At least the Scuff part. But welcome, welcome. We'll circle back to this. Okay, we need the concept of rotation. So, that means behaviors need rotation. Behavior groups are behaviors. It's one of the places I just don't... Bothers me when we have a dead variable like that. This targeter does nothing in behavior group. That said, it could. I don't think it ever would. But it could. Let's... If you recall, Tass, let me find an example here. When you call base, does that happen before or after the body of the function? When we call the super function? Sweet. So right now, act is abstract. We're going to change you to a virtual. Targeter. There. So then in the subsequent ones, we are going to call should work, right? Is that only for constructors? That would be annoying. We have to use super as the yeah. The syntax here as well? Nope. Ah. Really convenient. Hey there, Stickman. Welcome. It would be really convenient if we could do that. Do a quick lookup here. Something like that should work. There. Still not great, but it would be really nice if we could do that in a similar way, but you know, patterns are patterns, I guess. Now, I could do it as like a... One way to get around this would be to have a pattern we were doing previously, which would be like that, and have this be the thing that's overridden, have this be the thing that's called, and this calls the one that's going to be overridden. Yeah. I don't like having to call this, but this is a small price. This is relevant because that means we're always going to have the targeters updated this way consistently. So then, let's see, behavior needs a rotate type here. And targeters will need that. As the default version. So it's a vector 2. Stop being helpful, VS Code. Okay, so by default, that's what will happen if we don't change it. Which for the most part will work, because all of the targeters that use direction right now are saying, if I don't have a direction, determine the direction. And this will just adjust that direction when it gets behaviors by default. We'll say targeter.rotate radians. And then they may not do anything else. This move straight line doesn't carry anything. Move wave doesn't care. Move rotate doesn't care about what the targeter is up to. It only cares about the incoming vector. So, okay. So then in our entity, for those unfamiliar with this, we are making a game. We are making a game in which we're making a Vampire Survivor style game in which the weaponry is modular. How it behaves, what it does, all of that stuff is going to be stuff that you build on the fly during gameplay. And one of the things we're building right now is the ability to make the projectiles split into pieces. There is much going on. A lot of what's happening is me talking with folks about what I'm doing or just saying what I'm doing. So if you want to ask questions or just chat, feel free to do so. I can always pause and see what folks are saying. Rotate shouldn't change for individual entities. Entities isn't really a super type. Okay. Okay. When we rotate one, we rotate the base behavior, and then we call into each behavior and rotate that. Go into behavior groups, which is a subtype of behavior. Behavior has rotate, so behavior group. Rotate its target. Yep. It is technically possible to hit a behavior that looks at the entity and says, you know what? You're not moving. And it sets its proposed vector to 0. Like, it could stomp everything that happened before it. Which is an interesting thought. Maybe we'll have that. If we get to it, Parakeet proposed one earlier today that is a variation of the S-curve. That is, instead of it being a smooth curve left, right kind of thing, it's just a hard tick-tock kind of thing. Where it is, 45 degrees left, wait a second, 45 degrees right, wait a second. Yep, and just having it where once you hit that point it says it stops moving entirely. Then you could also have a gate after it that says, hey, something got close to me, start moving again. You get that magnetic space mines vibe, Okay. So then in our spread, instead of doing this, this only is the only real relevant part of what we're about to do. We're still gonna do some of this, but that is one of three. Those are three of the kitties. There, Paul, and hello, Paul. Welcome. Good an opportunity as any to switch over and see how the kitties are doing. You can see 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. Oh, no, there's the 5th one. So Sky is over. Let's see. From your point of view, Sky is on the 3rd camera. He is the big fluffy gray and white one. On the bed, kind of left to right, top to bottom, are Sherbet, Mason, and Sammy. And Ember is by the air hockey table. Yep, JR, that is a new thing we're trying with them. They like to lay on it. They like to play with it now and again. I do have to go try to find the pucks since Mason will occasionally try to steal them. But it seems to have made the play area a little more playful for them, so it's good times. But welcome, everyone. Welcome. Copy it, we rotate it, we add it. We don't need to do this anymore then. Haven't spawned yet. This'll totally work now, right? Does it explode? Oh, it works. Now we know what that means. As is tradition. Split into 3, split into 3, split into 3. We're definitely getting some aberration here. Because we're still holding at a nice steady 60 frames per second, but there's definitely a hitch happening. Because we could already see it We could already see that with just one. Let's... So this was just one split. There's something going wrong. So here's with just the one. I know, right, Tass? Like, I get that it's a more accurate way to describe it. It's a very readable way to describe it. It's just... like, I kind of want it just to be get in line, but it's a little... that's a little wordy. So it's working fine with this. First iteration is fine. Yeah, we can change the pace of them a bit. They can also just make them faster, so. Right there. We're already getting a bit of a hitch. As soon as the second split starts happening, we start having a problem. But why? Oh. Oh. I know why. Yeah, thinking. Because of this. I bet that's why. Because when we add entity, so we're calling add entity. It puts it in the entity collection. Each physics steps for each entity in the collection. We are changing the collection during a for each. So instead, if you got a question, fire away, Paul. What have I done this week? Yesterday we did rotation and wave motion. Today we're doing splits. Just as a quick call out and a general internet safety thing. This channel, while not targeted as a, adults only channel, is not targeted at children. So anyone that is not an adult can face ban at any time for their own safety and the safety of the channel. This is not meant to be an attack or condemnation of any listeners currently, but an FYI as far as channel guidelines and mod actions. Telling people on the internet information that they don't need to know is generally not the safest thing. The more you know, and such and such. Let us continue. Hello, Sammy. Okay, so instead of adding entities directly to the entity count here, we're just going to stuff them into entities to add here. Hey, Rice, we're doing okay. Doing okay. Bit of a sleepy day today, but the energy is flowing. We're getting there. We'll do the entities to add check. Oh. If we have room, add it. This is not 100%. This is never supposed to be a problem. We will have border case control for this, but all kinds of movement opportunities. So then in our physics process here, we need to move this out to the entity, actually. This chunk here. Okay, once we get this working, we need to move this into the entity. Oh, no. Okay, I see why this is. This is the spawning process right here. This is what would happen when you actually were creating like a weapon entity or something like that. Okay. Feel less insane. So we're going to call, what was it? Add entity. first. Okay, at the beginning of each physics loop, we go through and we take everything that's been added, and we stuff it into the collection. Then let's see here. This is just we're setting out to add things. Should be able to leave this as is. Okay. There. Okay, back to the gratuitous case. This should also protect against the it going overload during this too. Nice, nice. Yep, it working. Here, let's we're gonna have them move at half speed so you can see more of the glory here. You can see when it hits the cap. Just because. We're going to cap this a little lower here. Not because it's a problem, but because I actually want to see this. It gets exponential pretty quick. Here we go. Almost kind of like a brain. Yeah, Parakeet sees it too. Ooh, okay. Good test, good test. We don't get a good view of it. Let's get the rotates out of there first. Morning there, Talib. Might have to have fewer of them to see this. I mean, in theory, it's working. It's one of those, the pattern will get different as it goes. Like, we'll see more and more of the pattern build up the longer this progresses. Ask away. Feel free to ask questions about what's going on, folks. Doesn't matter if you don't know about programming or game dev or anything like that. It's a learning experience, or it's just a conversation. Just do... Oh, that's part of why. Didn't realize I had a movement wave there. Feel free to ask a question if you have one. Ooh, follow the pointer. Finally was watching just at the right time to actually see the split happening properly. Okay. Fancy. We're going to do a quick break with a quick code commit, and then we'll be right back. And I'm back. Let's see. Okay, let's do another little lightweight add-on here. Why is this not committed then? Oh, okay, no, it just doesn't like that. That's why. Sammy. Sammy is really good at that. What? What's your problem? Kind of look. Zigzag movement is very much like wave movement. Annoying that it did it that way. Zogzag. Orcish zigzag. Okay, cycles per second in current cycle. Let's see. It's not really a cycle. It's a flip switch. Actually, no. Okay. Dabu. So this is just current cycle plus equals delta. If cycle is cycles per second, times equals -1. Okay. So what this is like a flip switch. It's x times per second, which it can be faster or slower. We do need to change that, actually. We'll need to change how this is named, but every so often flip the switch. Get the rest of this in here. While cycle is F2. I get that it's different software, but I'm puzzled as to why it's so wildly different in its user interface. So Control R is a search of some kind. The shortcut for rename is F2. Just completely different. Okay, so we have it's each time we add delta to current cycle. If the current cycle value has exceeded the duration, then we're going to flip the toggle over. It will go between 1 and -1, back and forth, back and forth. Then we reduce current cycle down to less than cycle duration. Then we don't need any of that. Radians. Yeah. Oh, no, it would just be 45 here. Because, again, this doesn't actually change what this vector coming in is. Again, let's say we're going to the left. This will always be to the left when we're coming in. So the first time we're going to go down 45. But subsequently, when the toggle flips, we don't have to overcorrect by 90. We just flip it to 45 because we're going to be rotating the source one, not the modified one. Everything's in a vacuum. It's important that we remind ourselves of that regularly because it's so easy to forget that nothing else cares about what happened before. Oh, I should actually put it in there so we can see it. Hello there, Lane. We're going to go left. Left in there, and we are going to... We'll have a bunch of splits. That's okay. So we need a new movement type. It's going to be the same as wave. That. And then it will totally work. Oh, the split makes that extra weird. We need to speed it up so we can see it. Give it a whole second here. I think I might get what you were saying is well, I think I've got an idea for an alternate here. We have current cycle. I'm sorry, cycle duration. If cycle duration is set, we have a couple of things that need to happen here. How do I want to do this? That is a long sentence there, Lane. Okay, so what I want to do is that if the when we set the duration, I want to set the current cycle equal to half of the duration. Because just like with the sine wave, I want it to start kind of in the middle of it. Like it should gracefully flow out of its point of origin. As opposed to it being kind of like hanging down or sitting on top of the point of origin. So we're just going to kind of brute force this a bit. Zigzags to getting the copy in place here. Okay, so if it gets duplicated, this all properly carries. And then in our catalog, we are creating that. That. There. So you can see it starts halfway into its cycle when it's initially emitted. Nice, nice. Making progress. Okay. This one's Meteor, but it's definitely a... This is absolutely something we can do, you know? Okay, there will never be a default case. This is always an updated case. D dot. Called. Search here. Doing a quick lookup. Okay, let's see here. Don't know if this will work exactly as I wanted or how to find it in the C#, but we're gonna look for it. Let's see. How hard is it to create a game? It can take some time, Classy. It can take some time. This is, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Time and patience. This is stream 80. If I were devoting all of my time to it, we would be moving much further along. But a lot of it is putting in the time to learn, putting in the time to iterate, figure out what you're doing, try things, see what works, see what doesn't. I would say it's very hard if you're trying to make this a career from a standing start. I would say it's impractical. But if you do this on the side constantly, you would make steady progress. It's a matter of time. How much? It's going to vary. Okay, GD's ones don't have that. Yeah, time to iterate is a big part of it. Try something. Is it good enough for you yet? If it's not, try again. Learning what good enough is also part of the process. Oh, where is it hiding? Okay. Oh, let's see. We potentially need to get the scene tree here, but I don't know if we can get it from there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we need to get it from the context of a node, but if I don't have a node context at that point, can I still get it? That may be no. I think we can get around that yet. So right now, most of the stuff I have lives completely outside of the world. Mesh render is, I think, the only one that is a node. Get viewport is the right thing. At least that's what I found here, but it's... yeah. I believe this is a child of node. So if I go into my mesh renderer, yeah, it's a child of node. But this is not out of the question. The viewport is a Godot world thing. That's okay. So we're gonna hop on over here. So the game creates a mesh renderer node. We can create another type of node for that. So mesh render is a scene that has a C# script for it. This is in the game script here. Game world has a camera, it has the mesh renderer object. This is also, I think, where... I think this is ultimately where we could have things like the camera as well. So we could have like a game view sort of thing. How to do. Just take a drink. Let's think here. Look at game here. So we want to be able to access it universally. So having a central point that we add that in would be good. But it needs to be something that is kind of fail-proof in that regard. One possibility kind of like the idea. Talking through it. We have the core scene. Core scene currently has a game scene on it, but there's nothing that says that this game scene is always there. We could be instantiating that based on, I have started a game, here's the game scene, kind of thing. So the game scene is transient. But there should only ever really be one. With a sort of game handler associated with it. The mesh renderer extends a node because it is a visual element in Godot. And there can technically be multiple mesh renderers. There should never be, but there's nothing stopping you from having more of them. In the same vein that there could be multiple game nodes. So I think we're reaching a territory where there needs to be some way of... We kind of need a toolkit sort of thing. So there isn't really a reason for multiple game entities to be running at once. Multiple of these scenes existing doesn't make sense, so making it so that they all obey the same thing doesn't hurt. It would get weird fast if you had two games. But if we make game a static, that puts us into useful territory. That is, there is only one game object. If you make more of them... Can I make this a static, though? Let's find out. Quickly here. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it global in the way that I'd like, and I think it's just going to have to be a global node. But so it's twofold. It's where the camera is relevant, like where the current viewport is, and that is tree dependent. The game would live in a different part of the tree than a global node would. So the call that we're trying to make here is that I need to ask the current world, the current field of view that is defined by this camera, where my cursor is pointing at in world space. In order to ask that question, I need to get the viewport, which is again defined by, where we are in the node tree. And then I need to ask it what the position of the cursor is. But from the perspective of a targeter, that is a non-general question, So we would need two general concepts. The idea of asking if there's something to see, and then asking what the process is. So if the cursor isn't present, then don't change. So like, is the cursor in the window kind of thing. If the cursor is in the window, then update the position. If the cursor isn't in the window, don't update the position. Don't update our target direction kind of thing. It would just keep moving in the same direction. So we could have a static that essentially gets updated to say, this is the viewport that you would use when you're asking for things like screen position. So this is the camera, this is the viewport, that kind of thing. I think that might work. So then when the game fires up, it would say, hey, configure the static according to the entities that I have. Like, I have my camera here. I can tell the global handler, this is the camera kind of thing. And entities that are updating the target would just ask the global entity, like, can I ask you this question? Or am I going to get a viable result? We can't just say, is the position 0, 0, because that is a valid world position. We'd have to ask, is the viewport ready kind of thing? And if it is, where is the cursor in the game? I think we can do that. So that would be a static handler for Sky. Sky wants chin scratches. Because one of the things I'm trying to make use of, that I'm trying to really leverage here, is the fact that I can have statics. I can have essentially global classes cleanly in C#. I can just reference it and say, hey, the universal entity manager, do your thing. That is independent of the game world, as there is something that can sit there and operate. I can tell it to flush out its entities, all of that stuff. I don't need to worry that it is part of the node structure. And thus, I don't need to constantly, pin those nodes around. This would be a crossover point. This would be kind of an inflection point on that, because the thing that we are dealing with is node structure. So for, Entity Manager, this is a junction point. This is where it says, hey, do the physics step, because the Entity Manager is divorced of Godot's physics tick. Same will be true of a lot of the stuff, is their handling will be based entirely on event management and similar, so that I don't have to be relying on the node tree. But we have to deal with the node tree for this. And it needs to be from something that can't gracefully get those references. So we have to have an intermediary. I'm just saying this because right now I can't use the mouse, because Sky has it pinned against the keyboard. He is. Pretty much his whole torso has the mouse shoved to the side. Let's see. So the thought here is that we make a static class that encompasses some of this stuff. There would need to be references to structures in the world that need to be set and removed. We would need to have safety checks inside the method that would be some way to return proper values. Now, if I don't want it, I can ignore safety checks and essentially have a default that says 0, 0 is where the cursor is if it's not anywhere else. Which can create weird results, but frankly, it's not a big deal. If you put the cursor outside of the game screen and the thing is supposed to be targeting the cursor, weird stuff, it's okay for that to happen in that circumstance. The game has lost the cursor, you know? What to do? So we go in and we have to have a relay for that. That might be an easy dodge, though, because when the program is run, there is going to be a core node. So we could have just a relay of that and say, hey, when it starts, this is the tree, you know? But that might not work for the node structure. We're gonna give that a try. Sky. We're gonna give that a try when my cat lets me. Just unhook that claw there, buddy. While we wait, see what the others are up to. So the game entity, James, isn't a global, it is a node 2D. It is the kind of wrapper for a couple of the other things. For the most part, it's a house for the... it houses the mesh renderer. It provides the timing pump for Entity Manager, and it has the camera. If we create a static for essentially camera interaction, the game would be the one that would supply that stuff and say, like, I am the game node kind of thing. Our startup is core. And the reason that game and core are different is game will be instantiated when a game comes into existence. So, like, you know, you click start kind of thing. But options menus and all of that are things that would be independent of it. That way, when a game starts, we can have things like flush the entity collection before we get going. Quit that, Sky. Please don't click. No. No. Yeah. Yeah, we're looking at the kitties until Sky will let me do anything else. Ember's all cozy. I don't know where Sammy's hiding out. Ah, okay. Sammy is below the cat tree basket there. She is 2 platforms down. Sammy is less demanding of a high lookout for her napping spots. Every now and then you'll get cats that are they always like hide high up if they can do it. Just common. It's a cat thing. Okay. Gonna He's contemplating if he's had enough or not. This guy has not had enough. Okay, we have camera here. Because the game node isn't really a static, even if I were to make it a static class. Because it will have like child nodes and the like that should not be considered statics as far as the program is concerned. Now, instead of it being... camera always needs to be active for the purposes of the game. Yeah. Okay. So we could get things like the HUD and whatnot into like game view. As far as we're doing this, huh, Sky? So right now, and again, you can't really tell, but the angle that he is laying at, if you were to draw a straight line up his belly, to the side of his head, and you see how the mouse moved there. If I stop scratching his head, he will plonk his head down right on top of the mouse. He is positioned for maximum click and drag if I stop scratching him right now. He knows this. If I take my hand off the mouse and stop paying attention to him, like to type or something, and he wants attention, he will lunge at that mouse. He will grab it and drag it around and click at it. Because he knows that will immediately get my attention. I've played many games that have had bad results because of Sky. Hello, DN Wolf. Hello. Welcome. You done there, Sky? Are you? Okay. Well, we're doing Godot game coding in C#. Delta, we are currently working on some logic to make it so that projectiles would be aware of where the cursor is so they could follow them. Because that would probably be neat. I'm no expert in C#. I'm super duper rusty at it. I would say our expert here is probably Tass. He's one of the mods. But we're all learning together. First game I've made, first major project in C#. Like just visually, like art asset wise 3D, or like fully 3D environment? Have a is instance valid here? Hey there, Sinai. We're making a Vampire Survivors style game. Let's just really quickly. Everything should still function at the moment, so it's the bullet heaven genre. The you're standing at the center and there's all kinds of stuff going on, kind of thing. So that's one of the kind of game inspirations for it. The other is a game called Noida. And the thing we're pulling from that concept is buildable weaponry. So the way that the blobs are moving right now is a composite of behaviors. They're being told, move to the left, move in a zigzag pattern, and every 3 seconds split into 3. They're all modular parts. Is the stream recorded? DM Wolf, all of the streams for my Godot game project are on my channel. This is, stream 80. The C# stuff, probably like the last 10 or so has been C#. Maybe. Something in that territory. Sinai, my avatar was made by Animashit Studios. Well, thanks for swinging through, DM Wolf. Godot had an is instance valid kind of thing. Because Godot doesn't like it. Right, Tess. Animation Studios. If I recall correctly, the artist was Dende and the rigger was Inkjet. There is a link to my Discord and my various channels in the description of my videos. It is a LinkTree link which contains all of those. So I'm looking for an is instance valid kind of thing because I need to verify that the camera that I've got is still the right one. Because if the camera I've got has been removed from the tree and I try to touch it, Godot will explode. Hey there, Drew. Good to see you again. Go to game. Do we have... Is instance valid? Ah, it's a node. Are we gonna... So, Delta, in the earlier parts of this endeavor, we were using GDScript extensively. But we stopped, and I will show you why again. So, despite doing pretty much everything we could to maximize performance, we ran into a limit on the number of things we could have animating on the screen. So I'll call out when we hit the point that the GDScript version would have slowed to like 1 frame per second. It won't take long. So right about now, we'd be losing frames per second wildly. And let's see, right about... Let's say into this territory is the minimum that I'd want to be at for this game to function cleanly. This is at about... So, it would have failed at about 2,500 objects before. We're at 10,000 and we're still at a full 60 frames per second. We don't lose frames per second until we start to exceed about 15,000 objects. Right now, every one of these objects has at least a couple of things that it's doing at once. We can expand upon that and expand upon that, but that was the reason that we stopped using GDScript. Hello there, King. Welcome back, then. The C# side, there is extra footwork to do, and you have to... You have to deal with things a little bit differently, like touching the Godot side entities is a lot fiddlier. Okay, if game view were a auto-loaded node, it would extend node. And on the Godot side, there would be a global symbol defined. that would match that. We could then set those things, and then we could ask if elements were valid instances. I think it's okay for GameView to be a node object in that same way. Well, I think we need to think on this one a little bit longer. Mechanically, what we're trying to do is not like this thing that we're setting out to do is not out of the question or particularly difficult once we've got it rolling. The thing that I'm kind of bogging down on mentally is getting it in a way that I won't regret almost immediately. I want it to be maintainable. I want it to be readable. I want it to be easy. So, like I was mentioning, things like this is a node 2D. If it is a node 2D that has subsequently been removed from existence, it is no longer in an active part of the tree, and I try to touch it, then Godot pitches a terrible fit. It really doesn't like that. And I mean touch it, like referencing it on the Godot side. It will fail badly. So we need to protect against that, but we also need to make sure that code can be called cleanly. So I've got to figure out how to get that transition in place, because all of this stuff, almost everything I've been writing, happens entirely on the C side, so that we only have to touch the Godot side when absolutely necessary. Even our rendering code. This is a node 2D object, but really everything we touch inside of it is stuff that we instantiate on the C side. So I don't have to cross the barrier to touch anything. Everything that we interact with is stuff that we have created in that vacuum. So I think that will be where we pick up next time. More progress today, though. I was pleasantly surprised. The splitting logic, our initial form of coding it, worked reasonably well, but not completely. And the solution that we had to make it work fully, I think, is pretty solid. For those that weren't here during that, we've added a method for doing a fundamental rotation on an entity. That is to say, if I split it into three kind of equally spaced in a 90-degree arc, one of them will be rotated 45 degrees left, the other will be right, and the last will stay where it is. That rotation makes it so that all of the movement that it would be doing, all of the targeting and similar, is rotated in advance to account for it. So if it previously would have said, hey, I move left, it would now be saying, I move kind of down and left. Which works pretty solidly, as you saw. Every time it was splitting, it was doing that. And no impact on performance once we fixed a fundamental badly written loop. This next part isn't mechanically more difficult than really anything we've been doing. It's structure, it's design thinking that we need to do about it. So we'll pick that up next time. I do hope everybody that joined us today had a good time. If you did and you haven't already, consider liking, following, subscribing. It will help you find content like this in the future, and will get you notifications when I go live again next time. If you'd like to consider supporting the channel in other ways, there are links in my LinkTree to Patreon and Coffee, as well as things like YouTube subscriptions. with all of that said, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you next time.